Words are about to be spoken on the Extreme Life of Matt Hardy, presented to you by the ad-free shows and podcast heat networks. I'm John Alba. That is the broken one, woken one, spoken one himself, Mr. Matt Hardy. What's going on, my man? How you doing as we tape this fine Wednesday?
Life is beautiful. It is a beautiful Wednesday. Got a big weekend coming up. Going to be some exciting action this weekend at the TNA events. We're going to be doing some stuff for Impact. My wife, Queen Rebecca Hardy, is coming out of retirement after almost 8 years. Wild. And myself and her are going to be wrestling Eddie Edwards and Alicia. Ooh, boy, and there's going to be hell to pay in that one, especially after Eddie Edwards put his hands on my wife. So there's definitely a big vendetta going into that one. And then night 2 in Philadelphia on Saturday night, the Hardy Boyz return, and we are going straight after the tag titles. It's going to be Matt and Jeff Hardy versus Eddie Edwards and Brian Myers, the System, for the TNA tag titles. And I see no better time to win them than in Philadelphia.
Yeah, rumor has it that Queen Rebecca has been very cool, calm, and collected in getting ready for this match, and she is looking forward to it.
She's always very cool, calm, and collected, right? So yeah, she's pretty hyped for it. She is pretty hyped for it.
That's great. This will be, when you team with Jeff, be your first tag team match together since December 20th. So we're more than 7 months from the last time that you guys, just the two of you, teamed together. Crazy, man. Like, it's not like you guys are running through rehearsals together or anything like that. Do you expect it to just kind of come back like throwing that baseball mitt on the hand?
Very much so. It's a lot easier. Teaming with Jeff is a lot easier than riding a bike and getting off of it for many years and getting back on. Teaming with Jeff is instinctual at this point.
I was going to say, that's got to be so fantastic for you to be able to get a chance to do that. I'm so excited to see that. You guys have not won a tag match on television together since Double or Nothing 2022, which is crazy. But
right, us versus the Bucks, right?
Yes, that's right. The last time you guys won just a standard tag team match.
Yeah.
So we're talking more than 2 years since on TV you've won a tag match together. So how personally vindicating will it be to get a chance to have these performances?
It's going to be very, very rewarding in many ways. Just to remind people just who we are, because sometimes they forget about it. If you're somewhere and you don't feel like you're being optimized, you're not being used to your maximum potential, and you do get to go somewhere where you can perform to your maximum potential, sometimes you just have to remember people like, this is who we are and this is where we're at in our life. And I have had so much great feedback about my match with Moose at Against All Odds. We did a Comic-Con this weekend in Jackson, Mississippi, and I had I want to say 30 people, maybe it was 24, whatever, like 30 people during the course of those 2 days said, "Oh my God, I watched Against All Odds for your match with Moose, and I love that match. It was so good. I just wish you would have won the title, and I want you to fight him again. I want you to face him again, but I'm very happy Jeff's back. I want you to be the champion, and I want you guys to be the tag team champions." The interest in the fact that so many people said that they watched that match was very inspiring to me, and it really motivated me for the future as well. Like I feel like TNA right now, there's some buzz around it. We've got our guest who's going to be on shortly. He's got a ton of buzz around him. Jeff Hardy just returning, got a ton of buzz on that. You got the Hardy Boys back together, the GOATs, and we're excited to show that we are the GOATs and we are deserving of that title. And once again, our ultimate goal here is to win those TNA World Tag Team titles and have an amazing run and just make people remember who we are.
We do have Joe Hendry coming up on this podcast in just a little bit, and I'm telling you, this is going to be one of the best wrestling interviews you're going to listen to this year. So do not miss that. Stay tuned on that. I do want to touch quickly. You did say, you feel like you're in a spot where you're not utilized to your full potential. Last week, we spoke a lot about you leaving AEW, going to TNA. And I think that there were parts of it that were, speculated into individual clips that maybe it gives indication of how you're feeling one way versus something and how you're feeling another way about it. Let's set the record straight, Matt. I don't want to put words in your mouth. Can you provide some sort of distinction here in how you felt about booking versus how you feel towards Tony Khan and AEW as an organization.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, the AEW fan base, they see more than anybody else. They want authenticity. They want people to be authentic. Well, I'm about to give you the most authentic answer you could possibly ask for. I greatly enjoyed being at AEW. I think Tony Khan's a great guy. I think he takes incredible care of all his performers at AEW, and I never fought him for that. I just think some of the creative decisions that were made once Jeff came back and he spent 3 or 4 months kind of proving himself and trying to earn everyone's respect and trust back and whatnot. I just feel like following that, we could have been capitalized more on. And that's really the only issue that I had any gripes with. We were well compensated while we were working there. I have zero complaints about that. I loved my time at AEW overall. I love the roster there, a bunch of great people, a bunch of great men and women, good stuff. Yeah, I'm just was frustrated with these things. And the fact that people maybe didn't listen to it, they just read headlines and things were taken out of context. If you want to go back and listen to this episode again or watch it right here on YouTube, where you can actually see us as we're speaking about things. I mean, you will see that I have lots and lots of love for AEW. I want AEW to thrive. I want AEW to be successful. I am just talking about my personal experiences and what I thought could have been done differently to maximize and optimize Matt and Jeff Hardy. And that is it. There's a reason when we first started getting pushed that stopped and it didn't happen. And that was because of my brother. And I'm very open and transparent about that. And I acknowledge that immediately whenever we talk about it in the episode. And I acknowledge everything throughout this. And I feel like John is very good at taking people to task and making sure they make their point, that they're being truthful, that they're following the facts. And I thought we had an amazing conversation when it came to that. I just legitimately talked about my gripes when we were being told we were being reset, we were being started. We're going to focus just on the Hardys, no more Hardy Party. Isaiah wasn't going to be with us anymore, and it just never materialized. It never happened. And those are where my gripes come from.
Yeah. And you can feel like, okay, our characters were devalued, or I didn't like the direction we were going, while also recognizing I understand why there may have been hesitance to do that. Those two things don't have to exist together. They can be independent of one another. And I thought you made that pretty clear. And I appreciate you clearing that up. And, you know, one thing I will say, and I appreciate you saying this as well, in anything that I do, even this project that we've had on this podcast for the last 3 years, I will never shy away from trying to take someone to task and ask a hard question, because I think that's important for you to have a good product. You need to be able to ask those very honest questions. And I thought you did a great job answering them very truthfully last week. So go check that out in the archives. I can't encourage it enough. Apple, Spotify, YouTube, extremehardy.com. Listen to that entire episode. And I think if you really give it a full listen through, you will have a thorough understanding of where Matt's coming from. And he was not taking anyone to task in AEW personally or anything of that nature. So, yeah, man, I thought it was a good episode. Go check that out. Anything else you want to add on that front?
Yeah, I mean, I just think if you go back and you listen to the entire episode and you don't just read headlines or just like bits and pieces that are pulled out of the entire podcast, then you truly understand my perspective. And I think you can understand where I'm coming from whenever I speak about those things. And something that's very important to me, something I've learned through all my struggles, whatever. I mean, there's times in life where you have to have hard conversations, you know, with friends, with your spouse, with kids, whatever it may be, with people that you work with, your boss, your fellow colleagues, and you have to have those. You can't shy away from those hard conversations. And I just feel like here we're trying to be transparent, we're trying to be honest, and it's important that we have those hard conversations. And I'm glad you asked those questions. I wouldn't want it any way, because I don't want to like mince my words, and I don't want to say stuff that, you know, is out of context, you know. So I want to sit here and I want to like talk about things, and I want to have an honest dialogue, even if it is a tough dialogue.
Yeah. And people were like, well, you put the clip up, so that's what you want people to see. We put those clips up as an appetizer to get people to want to hear more for the podcast. So I very much encourage you to go check out the whole episodes if you have not, because we talk about a lot of different things on this podcast, like what I'm about to pivot to right now. And that's to talk to you. I know you have deep interest in this Wyatt Sick6 stuff. And I
am invested, John.
the Bo Dallas Uncle Howdy interview that we saw on Monday Night Raw was some really gripping television, and I know you've got some thoughts on it. We haven't spoken at length about it. I'd love to hear what you thought about it.
I thought it was phenomenal. I mean, I think it's literally where you almost, I feel like it was kind of portraying someone talking to their inner self, you know, the way he was talking to his alter ego. So you have the alter ego, you know, playing the guy who's going to ask the tough questions, the wild questions, and like really try and break you down and get to the truth. And I feel like they portrayed that in a very strong way. And just watching Taylor, watching Bo Dallas answer, he was so believable. He was so good. It felt so real, probably because it is real. And I would imagine it was one of those things that was difficult. It was a difficult thing to film. But it was so real, but it added so much equity into him doing this for his brother, because he said he always looked up to his brother. He wanted to be his brother. And when it felt like they were finally there, which it was, they were on the verge of doing this together, then his brother was taken away from him. And, you know, he was lost in life. And just the way he voiced all this in the emotion and his expressions, I mean, it was practically perfect. And I thought this was like an amazingly put together segment, which just elevated the equity of Uncle Howdy and Bo Dallas all in one, that character, that persona, to another level.
For me, it answered 3 questions that were very critical, and I'm really glad that it did that. Number 1, it gave you the why. It gave you the motivation of the character. Why, and even on a very surface level, because they didn't dig too deep into it, but we have an understanding that his actions are in honoring his brother's legacy now. That's huge. That gives us that gives us a framework for the entire group to work with, and that he felt forgotten. Number 2, they asked point blank, "Are you just exploiting your brother?" Which you and I talked about on the podcast last week. People are going to view it as that. They addressed that right away. That was great. And the third thing, which I think might have been the most important thing, was that it showed that Taylor Rotunda, Bo Dallas, can be a layered enough character and performer that he could be looked at as a top guy in this company at some point. And I understand it's just one segment, it's one litmus test, but think how much more valuable he came across in that one segment than the entirety of his WWE run prior to that.
Yeah, no, I mean, that's correct. What that segment did for him was massive, John. It was massive.
Yeah. I would love to now see those same exact types of interviews with each character in the Wyatt Six. I'd love to see Dexter Lumis talking to that Hawk, the Buzzard character. I'd like to see Joe Gacy talking to the Gas Mask, and Eric Rowan talking to the Rabbit Mask, and Nikki Cross, and understanding their whys. Why are they part of this? What about Bray's legacy made them want to be part of this? Let's understand that in full, and then imagine how impactful every time they show up on camera can be. What do you think of something like that?
I do. I think that's interesting. I almost think, because we have Bo Dallas as the leader, Uncle Howdy, obviously the leader of the group, the mastermind behind everyone. I would prefer to see the other characters explain their motivations in different ways, and I would save this and make it exclusive and unique to Uncle Howdy, because I think it's something you could go back to, and I think you want to highlight him above the rest as the leader to make him more important.
So would you have him interviewing them in that case?
That might work. Yeah. That could work. I could see that, having him speak to all the characters to understand their motivations.
Yeah.
But I would try and centralize that to him, where that is like his thing now.
Yeah, that's fair. I think it's great. Again, the more they, for me, my taste, and what I think sustainability too, the more they lean into the psychological thriller element of it, the more successful it's going to be. I think if you lean too much in the spookiness and the smoke, it feels, I don't know, it feels to me a little tropey pro wrestling kind of thing. Whereas if you're leaning more into the thriller side of it, okay, that's something that's going to resonate cross-platform and people are going to be really drawn into what they're seeing. You could have shown that segment to a non-wrestling fan and just been like, watch this. What do you take away from it? And they probably would have been intrigued by it versus showing someone crawling through smoke in the middle of a wrestling ring. Maybe I'm being too critical. I don't know, but that's just kind of
I don't disagree with what you're saying. I think there's times whenever you see them be the characters, there is going to be those creepy crawls through the smoke, especially by Abigail, by Abby. And I think the other characters are going to do things that are terrorizing and frightening. But I think if you give all of these characters like real life human being meanings and motivations, I think that will go a lot further.
Yeah. And I'm really intrigued by it. I hope that they continue to develop it and pace it out. And I'm looking for, I'm happy Chad Gable's not dead. I was concerned about that after last week, but thankfully he's okay. In fact, he's thriving. He won a number 1 contenders match to get into Money in the Bank. So there you go. Look at that. Anything else sticking out to you in the pro wrestling realm? We got Forbidden Door this coming week, and obviously, we'll talk about TNA over the course of this podcast, but
sure.
Anything else standing out?
This morning, as I was doing cardio, I got to watch the whole episode of NXT and kind of catch up on it a little bit, which I thought was really cool. And I enjoyed it. I think Ethan Page is doing a great job. I love seeing his promos. I love seeing him in that heel role of all ego. I think that's where he excels and he's at his best. So I was pretty pumped for that. And I thought it was a pretty solid episode. Once again, I was trying to familiarize myself with most of their performers and their characters there, because I love the fact that this TNA, NXT, agreement is going on, and there's a little bit of a trade-off here, there, and everywhere. And I think that's going to continue to grow as time goes on. So definitely making sure I'm familiarizing myself with everyone on NXT.
There are a lot of people online, Matt, saying that they don't see how this necessarily helps TNA. They see how it helps WWE by getting to use the talent. How, in your opinion, does the relationship help TNA?
I mean, WWE is the biggest platform in all of pro wrestling. NXT is part of that. NXT is still hugely popular in all walks of life when it comes to pro wrestling. And the fact that TNA is just having talents that are hot and on there, like a Joe Hendry, for instance, Frankie Kazarian, when they were on there in the Battle Royal, then that makes people like, oh, I like these guys. Like, let me seek them out now. And they will look for them. So yes, it does. It absolutely helps TNA. And the thing that I like about it, so TNA and AEW, they had a bit of an agreement at one point, but I know like Tony would always talk trash on TNA. And this one seems like it is a little bit more mutually respectful in some ways. You have someone from TNA show up at NXT, you have someone from NXT show up at TNA, and I'm just really excited where this is going to go going forward, and I like the way it's being handled thus far.
When you say talk trash on TNA, I just want to clarify, you're not talking backstage, Tony's talking shit about TNA, you're saying on camera in like an invasion style way.
I mean, Tony would do those paid ads where he would pay for the ads, and he would just say AEW is so much better than TNA and this, that, and the other thing. And I mean, that's fine. If that's the approach you want to do to it, that's absolutely fine. But I also come from a place where if you're going to compete against someone, if it's an opponent in the ring, at some point you need to put them over so that they look credible and they could beat you, or if they do beat you, so you don't just like talk about how awful they are and then they beat you, so you must be awful if they beat you. I feel like it is important to put over your opposition to a degree so that they seem somewhat on the same level, especially if you're doing stuff going back and forth. But Tony chose an opposite route, and that's fine. I mean, it was something different, and maybe it worked at the time, where he would just talk about how much better that AEW was than TNA. Yeah,
well, again, that approach was very much like, this is an invasion storyline versus this. It's very much collaboration. So they're two very different approaches to representing that relationship. And I guess we'll see which one ends up being more fruitful in the end. Interesting. You got your eyes on people there. That's who knows? Never know. Anything can happen in the extreme life of Matt Hardy.
Anything can happen in the extreme life of Matt Hardy. One thing that I always tell people that are aspiring wrestlers, and they ask like, what advice would you give me as a wrestler? And usually what I sum it up with is just like, make it a lifestyle. Because like, if you want to make it every day, you need to be eating a certain way. You need to be working out in the gym, training in the ring, working on your persona, your character, whatever you're going to be doing. And something else that is very important and crucial that I really stress to people more than anything else is like, know your rosters, know everyone that is at WWE, know everyone at AEW, know everyone at NXT, know everyone at Ring of Honor, know everyone at TNA, know everyone at MLW, know everyone at NWA, because you never know if you're a new young wrestler where you're going to get an opportunity. If you get an opportunity at NWA and you walk in and you don't know people there, then you're doing yourself a disservice. If you walk into MLW or you walk into TNA and you don't know the people there, you're doing yourself a disservice. So even as my old ass, just sat back and watched NXT. So I'm going to familiarize myself with everyone there. And there's a lot of new young guys that are just, getting their start and really, really beginning their careers. So, I just wanted to catch up on all that and be familiar with everyone.
Certainly so. Certainly so. Someone you have familiarized with. He's the guest on our podcast this week. He is Joe Hendry. So excited for everyone to hear this interview. Matt, what can people look forward to in this conversation?
Joe Hendry, great guy, great performer, and really deep. And I like his perspective on the business. After talking to him for 5-6 minutes, I could see we were very similar and we had similar mindsets. So very excited to chat and go into detail about things and just where he's at right now in his career, kind of how he got there and where he sees his future. So very excited for it.
Well, with that said, you know what I got to ask, Matt Hardy. Please hit us with that Matt fact.
Matt fact. Matt believes in Joe Hendry.
Say his name, and he appears.
Whoa!
Here I am. Here I appear.
It's real.
Look at that. Joe Hendry hopping on the extreme life of Matt Hardy. All it took was a little belief. Joe, thanks so much for coming on with us, man. We really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it too. It's been an interesting few weeks, and I'm enjoying all this buzz and everything that's happening. So I'm excited to talk to you guys about it.
Yes, we're very grateful to have you on here. It's very exciting to be able to speak to you. And I've interacted with you at TV. We really haven't gotten to the weeds talking about things and, our wrestling backgrounds and how we got started, our motivations, our inspirations, stuff like that and whatnot.
Mm-hmm.
But I think it's so cool that you're doing so well. And I love the fact that you're legitimately the hottest guy in the business right now. If someone who has never ascended, you are hot and you are ascending faster than anyone else ever has. And if I'm not mistaken, you have the #1 highest viewed video since WrestleMania. Is that correct on the WWE social media?
Well, it's actually of the whole year now. So even including WrestleMania, my debut is the most viewed, not just the most viewed video on X for WWE, but it's the most viewed tweet as well. So it's got both of them, and it's shortly going to become NXT's biggest Instagram reel of the year as well. It's pretty close.
Very good. I have one thing to say about that.
Thank you, Matt.
Hit that clap. I'm here for it.
Thank you.
That is unbelievable. And I'll tell you, Joe, it's something that can truly only happen in pro wrestling, right? You think about other sports, a player gets really hot. They're hot for a week or two, and then they go on a cold streak. In pro wrestling, when there's an opportunity to connect with the fans at that really authentic level and they get behind you, you can ride that as far as you want to. So how have you been managing this sudden increase in fan interest and support for you?
Well, it's for me, I've always been working pretty hard on creating content that I think wrestling fans and non-wrestling fans would enjoy. And that's always something that I've tried to do. But I think what's been different about this year is two things. I've really dialed in on, rating myself in the areas of physique, promo, in-ring work, and really just training very hard when we don't have tapings to improve, by, let's say 1 point out of 10 every 3 to 6 months, and not thinking about I need to be, Bret Hart overnight. But just thinking, can I be 10% better than I was 6 months ago? That has to be achievable in all areas. So that's kind of how I've been approaching that. That's where I've been putting the hard work side of things. I'd say I've learned that from Moose. He really approaches wrestling like he approached the NFL, and he realized, I should really be approaching it like this. So I think I gained that from him. And the other factor is understanding the importance of timing. And timing is a multiplier that will have an exponential effect on your activities. So one example of that is the billboards that I had with just my face with no context. That was an idea that I've wanted to do for years, but Clash at the Castle was the time to deploy it, where that would be funny if I just put that billboard in Glasgow at a random day, but to do it when there's 20,000 wrestling fans in my home country, that's an example of the element of timing. So it's having respect for timing and responding to things as they happen.
Yeah, I was gonna say too, like your social media game has, I think, been off the charts. It's been so good, and it really is reminiscent. Some of the things you do, because you do it in such a sly, smart, creative way. Whenever you address either someone who loves you or hates you, and I love the momentum that it has built, like the stuff with Mark Henry. Where he said, like, I believe. And then I saw JBL, and I just actually chatted with him a couple days ago. He put, I believe in Joe Hendry. And it's just like such a fad that so many people are into right now. And I remember meeting you in that show, right? Whenever I was doing the tour with Kenny. And it was one of the wrestling shows, correct? Where we met? Is that right?
So we were in Manchester. And we were at it was a club in Manchester, and you blew us away because no one had ever done that with Inside the Ropes before, to do the entire show completely 100%, not only committing to character but also answering the questions in an entertaining way that the fans wanted to know the answers to. So you were able to manage those two goals in a way that I've never seen anybody do it. So you blew us all away that day. So I met you then. And definitely left a lasting impression on me for sure.
Very cool. Because I do remember meeting you, and I remember I was like, I met this guy when I was on the tour. Whenever I really first remember being exposed to you was when you started doing the things in TNA, and you would have the face, and you had the song, right? The parody song, the funny song over it, the satire. And I was like, well, this is really cool. This is really different. And we did that. And I love just how that has grown over time. The stuff where you did the take on Higher, and you parodied it, and you did the whole thing with AJ Francis was one of the most amazing things I saw. I popped so huge for it.
Thank you.
Well, and that's utilizing stuff that's part of your natural skill set and incorporating it into your art. Was there ever any hesitance for you, Joe, to begin to bring that vulnerability down and extend your character to be a more natural part of yourself?
Absolutely. This is a conversation that my flatmate, a guy called Dave, he's someone we've been on the pro wrestling journey together, and he said to me, you're really going to explode when you show them a little bit of Joe. And he explained to me that you've always had the gimmick, but you need to show them the character. You need to show them who Joe Hendry is just a little bit. And he was so right, because I think that's one of the reasons that the clip from NXT went so viral, because, I do the head turn. I heard the pop, and I'm like, oh my God, this is so much bigger than this moment is so much bigger than I thought it was going to be. Sorry, I think this app just put in a random thumb.
Yeah, I mean, it fit perfectly. It was very appropriate.
Yes,
it did. I was already thinking, I was like, wow, that was really creative. He got that thumbs up just to emphasize his point. Good stuff.
So there was, I've started showing a little bit more now, because I think what I've realized is, TNA Creative taught me that you have to, when you're getting a reaction in professional wrestling, whether it be in a match or a promo or something you're doing, the fans have to feel that they contributed to that moment and they made it happen. And so when I started to understand that this isn't just about me, I'm going on this journey with the fans, and their reactions to what I'm doing is what is causing all this. If the fans weren't there screaming at NXT, if the fans weren't there laughing their asses off when I did the Creed parody, none of this matters. It only matters because of the way the fans are reacting. So I understood that I had to let them open to who I am for them to come on the journey with me. And it kind of feels like just because I'll be honest, I become totally okay with not making it on a mainstream level. I learned to love this in front of 100 people, 50 people. That is when, and that was only a couple of years ago, I got to that point where I stopped going I hope I get signed, or I hope I get this, or I hope I get that. I just learned to love it in front of 100 people and just made the best videos I could and just did the best I could. And after that, that's when my career went like this.
Yes. And that passion that you speak of, that passion is irreplaceable. That passion is what fuels most of the greats to become greats in many, many ways, and especially establish longevity, establish a great career. And one thing that you have done that a lot of people don't really get now, because I feel like there's such an emphasis on like great in-ring wrestling, the most important thing any pro wrestler can have is an organic, genuine emotional connection with the fans, and that's what you have now. And once you open your arms and you accept them and you understand that they are part of you in many, many ways, they're an extension of you because you are doing things that entertain them. And if they feel like they are part of that, then that's when that's when you win. And that's where you're at right now. And that's what's so nice to see. As you said just before, like you really became comfortable with this a couple years ago. Well, I'm at one with these fans and they're picking up what I'm putting down. And that is the most important thing in pro wrestler, as a pro wrestler. That emotional connection is just paramount to succeeding.
Absolutely. And that was very apparent the other day. Like, it was pretty cool. Before I went out there to NXT, I didn't have a whole lot of time to think about it. I was in LA the day before representing TNA on a Chris Van Vliet's show, and there were 2 flights booked, one to go back home to Scotland, one to go to Orlando just in case. And obviously we know I took the Orlando flight, but Steve Corino said, hey, tonight's going to be a big pop. And I was kind of like, yeah, we'll see, hopefully. And Tommy Dreamer pulled me aside and he was like, Tommy told me, he says, I'm going to stand in the fans tonight. And he says, because you're about to have a moment that I had in ECW, and I want to watch you experience it from the viewpoint of the fans. And he said that to me just before I went out, and then he went into the fans. And when I'm looking at the fans, that was me registering, like, Tommy was right, and I didn't know that was going to happen. I don't know if I believed him at the time, but it was such a cool moment. And it was just like validation. Like that's what the last 6 months have been, because I spent 10 years just writing songs and not really doing anything with them, but just thinking, I think I've got something to offer. And then I had a single in the charts, and then same with wrestling. Like, I'd become totally comfortable with, even before I got to TNA, totally comfortable with just doing it on a smaller level. And then I was like, oh, these people all know what I'm doing and they're enjoying it. And this is, it was just such an awesome feeling. And I'm very grateful for it, because I've learned to really love the simple things about my life. So like, I love coming home to my dog. I love taking him for a walk. I love having the first coffee in the morning. And I think that is really essential to come down from these, like, from the buzz. And I've learned to love the simplicities of life. So these big pops and reactions are like just a bonus. And I hope that everybody gets to experience their dream in the way that I have. It was awesome.
Yeah, that's amazing. And you're so clearly very appreciative for that. It's so interesting that you brought up the whole moment thing and not being sure as to whether or not it would translate. Matt and I were talking about you on the podcast last week, because he has said he sees a lot of parallels, maybe not in content substance, but journey wise, in between yours and the whole Broken Matt Hardy thing. Because, with TNA, sorry about that, TNA has a very limited reach. And then when it starts branching out, and people in other promotions, in other forms of media, hell, in the Stanley Cup Finals, Carter Verhaeghe, there was a sign that said, "I believe in Verhaeghe," and like you're crossing over. And I said to Matt, when you came out and you got that reaction, that was the litmus test. Is this guy really crossing over? And it worked. Did you feel like that you passed that litmus test in that moment?
Well, now I take very much of a student's mindset to professional wrestling. Like, it's funny, the better I get and the more experienced I get, the more humility I feel about my abilities. So the more humble I've become. And so when I was there, to be honest with you, I didn't have a whole lot of time to overthink it. And when I was there, I was just really trying to absorb, okay, Shawn Michaels and Matt Bloomberg doing my entrance this way. And, Johnny Russo's telling me to do this part of my entrance this way. And WWE are just, their production is so slick. So I was there just trying to take in as much information as possible. So that's kind of where my mind was. I did have this moment in rehearsal where all the other wrestlers were in the ring. And I came out and I did the promo, and I just thought, I'm going to kill this. I don't know why I thought it. Like, I just thought, I am going to destroy this. I'm going to show what TNA is all about. And I usually don't have that feeling, but I just had it. And then, you know, to me, what was, again, further validation for me was the fact that me and Shawn Michaels had an interaction after the match. And, you know,
Yeah.
we had a promo, and he, you know, that doesn't happen often. That's a big deal. There's people who have been under contract to WWE for 10 years who won't get that. And I got that. And then he turned to camera and said, I believe. And for Shawn Michaels to do that, you know, in my view, greatest in-ring wrestler to ever lace up a pair of boots. I thought to myself, I must be doing something right.
Yeah, 100%. 100% agree with that. I mean, for Shawn to actually be willing to be in a pre-tape and involved with you and like trying to get a rub from his star power, you know, is what he's doing there. And that's a great compliment. And that shows that he sees something special in you. One thing I even want to say is I noticed whenever we did the show closing promo, I want to say, remember when we had the big super tag that was like the intergender champions versus all-star team, right? We were on that. And I think that's the first time we were involved in a deal together, but just, we had whenever we finished the night, they said, oh, we'll do a show closing promo. And I did something. And then you said like, oh, I'll come back tomorrow, whatever else. Just the confidence you had. I can see that you are feeling what you're doing now. You've like found the perfect combination, the perfect mix of like Joe Hendry, the character, and Joe Hendry, the man. And you're able to put them together. Like the confidence you spoke with, really, to me, what made it apparent that like this guy's ready. This guy's ready to like move forward and be one of the guys that is pulling the wagon on his TNA.
Thank you, Matt. I really appreciate that. And I hope you don't mind me kind of pulling the curtain back a little bit. And
not at all.
I want the fans to understand like that this business goes around because you have people like Matt and Jeff who make decisions to help other talents. So when, for example, when Jeff came back, my understanding is that we were going to go out and then Matt and Jeff were going to do a promo to send everybody home. But Matt, Jeff, and Nick all made sure to pass the mic to me when I wasn't expecting to have a great deal of say. And that, I just want to put that out there because it takes, you know, talents like Matt being giving to a talent like me. I'm only in this position because they're giving me a chance to step up to the plate, you know? So I just want to say I'm very thankful for that. That really meant a lot to me. Both like you guys and Nick have done that for me multiple times now when it wasn't necessarily planned. You guys just felt it that we were going to give this guy some time to speak here, and I very much appreciate it. It has done wonders for my career. It was it's been awesome moments for me, and it means a lot to me. So I just want to thank you for that.
You're very welcome, and we're very happy to do that. Jeff and I very much understand our positioning, and when we were coming up, it was a lot different because the veterans weren't as willing to just give away their rub. You know, they really made you work for it a lot harder, earn it a lot more. And whenever we were out there doing that promo, I know Tommy had said that, like, you know, you guys close, send them home happy, whatever else. And Jeff and I were talking about it. He's like, man, I don't know if we should like be the last person to say things, whatever. I said, we'll say our little piece. I'll introduce you. Jeff doesn't prefer to say a lot on the microphone as it is anyway. That's more of a me thing. And then we're out there, we did our deal. And I said, I think we should end it with Joe. I mean, because we have had ours. We've had our ascension. We've been at the top. We've done everything twice, whatever. And it's important to us to give back. And like Tommy kept saying so much, like I was watching that scene and I was like, holy shit, like TNA, we've got some star power now. There's Matt Hardy, there's Jeff Hardy, there's Nick Nemeth, you know, and then we also have out there right now the up and coming white hot Joe Hendry. And he said that felt good. It looks like we have 4 main eventers in the ring. And that was the purpose for that. And then we wanted to highlight you last at the very end. And it was very cool. Everything you said, you were so gracious, and you are, whenever people are good to you, you are very humble, and it's very nice to see, because there's a lot of people that get caught up in their own mind, right? But I feel like in a lot of ways you're probably like us, because you've had a long journey in doing this, and you know, once you get to that point where you said you would have been happy doing it on a smaller level, not like on the highest platform possible, but then you started breaking through and reaching success, and then you become even more grateful for it, because Jeff and I were definitely like that. I remember you said Steve Carino, just doing indies with Steve Carino, he had moved to North Carolina, and we did a little interpromotional feud where I ran Omega and he had NWA 2000. It's funny, we were going back and forth doing things, and Steve and I have always been close since that. But like, it's just crazy if you really work hard and you're at the right place at the right time, and you believe in yourself and you have that confidence. This business, you can have a lot of longevity in it, especially in this day and age, because there's so many different things you can do as a performer if you're a good speaker and entertainer.
Yeah, I just honestly right now, like, I get emotional like thinking about it sometimes and talking about it. And you know, if you look at the NXT video, like a lot of the comments in it are like, he's emotional here. And I don't specifically remember the exact emotion I was seeing at a particular time, but looking back at it, I'm like, I definitely have these moments where I'm like, I became totally okay with just doing this and being happy and loving doing this. And it went from, because when I started in the business, I think when you get into, I can't speak for everybody, but for me, the more I talk to professional wrestlers, I feel like we are the misfits. We are all the misfits, and we are a collection of misfits, and we come together. But we all come into professional wrestling, and we do this because we've got something to prove. Maybe it's to ourselves, maybe it's to someone who you know, told us we couldn't do it. We all have something to prove, and we have these. You start off with these selfish intentions of, well, I want to sign here, and I want to win this belt, and I'm going to do this, and I. And then when COVID happened, because in Scotland, we were shut down for almost 2 years. I just got signed to Ring of Honor, and I was like, yes, finally got to America, got a visa, shut down. And I had to have wrestling taken away from me. And when wrestling was completely taken away from me, I stopped thinking, I had to accept it might never come back. So when I went back to it, it wasn't about me, I. It was about, what's the best thing that I can give the audience? What's the biggest pop I can get? What's the biggest laugh I can get? How can I contribute in a way that, how can I fill a spot that needs filled? How can I do my part? So it went from taking to giving. And ironically, that mentality, you end up with way more successful when you're not focused on what you can get out of the situation. That's my
I'll tell you what, Joe, if Matt Hardy had wrestling love languages, you'd be checking all of them off right now, because everything you're saying resonates entirely with how Matt thinks. I mean, I've been doing this show with Matt for almost 200 episodes now, and you know, that's the exact approach that Matt has, and I do see so many similarities in how you look at pro wrestling. And I want to ask you and follow up on what you said about them, you know, giving you the promo and everything. Matt and I talk every week on this podcast how, you know, there are people who are largely very appreciative of the legends and, you know, what they offer to wrestling. But then there's a lot of people who say, oh, we don't need those people in the industry anymore. You know, go retire, whatever. What value do you believe people like the Hardys bring to TNA in particular?
Well, there's someone that I follow called Alex Hormozy who has a great phrase that I use for myself, which is, rather than, you know, stare in a mirror and give yourself affirmations, look for the undeniable proof that you are who you say you are, you know. And when I look at the legends that we've got in the locker room, the stars that we've got in the locker room, the experience that we have, the proof is in the pudding, you know. Matt, I was there, and I've been to one WrestleMania, and it was when you guys came back in Orlando, wow. I believe it was. Yeah. And that's the only WrestleMania I've ever been to. So I talked to my friends about this, where I was like, isn't that crazy that I went to WrestleMania to see that moment, and here I am standing in the ring with you guys, you know? And that was very special for me. But that reaction was just, you know, you guys have been over the entire time, and you know how to reinvent yourselves over and over again. And you, again, the proof is in the pudding. Like, you came, like Matt, when you came back and wrestled Moose, you guys killed it. And you know, it's in one night, I'm struggling to put it into words. I just think, like, long story short, the proof is in the pudding. You guys and the legends that we've got, you have navigated this business, and you've proven not only longevity, but being over the entire time. There's never a time where the Hardys weren't over. Like, obviously there's different ways that you're presented on television, but you guys are always talked about in culture with even non-fans. Like, if I mention the Hardys, everybody knows who they are. So yeah, it's the proof is in the pudding.
Yes, thank you very much for those kind words. I appreciate that. And it's funny that you said you were at WrestleMania 33 because I was feeling some of the feelings came back in my chest and in my heart and soul whenever you were talking about NXT. Like, are they really going to pop? You know, like I'm at TNA, because I remember we had got real hot. They were doing a lot of delete chants at WWE events and whatnot. And they were doing it at TV. And there was one time where Vince McMahon said, "What the hell do they keep doing that? Delete. What is that?" You know, and then someone said, "Oh, well, that's, you know, Matt Hardy, him and the Hardys, they're doing this thing. They have this broken Matt Hardy, and, you know, Jeff's doing something where he's Brother Nero, and it's gotten over pretty big." And like, our biggest success in getting over wasn't necessarily the TNA television and their outlets, because it still wasn't huge at that time. It was just how things continued to get memed, and the gifs that would be all over social media of what we were doing, and things were so different. It grew like a cult like following, and they're like, "Oh my God, this is so different." And at first people were it was so polarizing, and people didn't know what to think. But then, like, I realized, like, they care about it one way or the other. They either think it's the greatest thing ever or it's the worst thing ever. So then, like, once we started rolling with it and people kind of got what we were doing, then that worked amazingly. And when we were showing up at WrestleMania 33, I thought it was cool that we ended up doing that. But I was thinking to myself in the back, like, when we go out, are we going to get the reaction that they're hoping for? Or, like, is it going to be good? You know, you just question yourself, are you going to get the pop? Because we were doing this on a much, much smaller level. And then to come out and have tens of thousands of people like losing their minds and doing delete, you know, something that you started in TNA, you know, which people had kind of like written off at that point, and going nuts, and the whole building doing it. And just there were so many videos from all across the planet that people were sending, so excited about our comeback and when that music hit and whatnot. And it was the greatest feeling ever. Even I tell people all the time, that moment to me, it still feels surreal, like a dream. When I remember it, it's not vivid, like very crystal clear. It's like fuzzy around the edges, because it was just so surreal in so many ways. But truly is one of the most amazing moments in our career. And I'm just so grateful we were afforded that moment. And it reminded me so much of the NXT thing. When you come out and you go, okay, I got them, you know, whenever you come out and you feel it and you experience. And that's how we were when we were coming down that ramp. It was so great, because also too, we hadn't seen the arena all day. Like, we had been at a 5-hour signing earlier with my whole family, all of House Hardy. And then we went to a hotel. And then when we showed up and we walked out of that curtain, that was our first time seeing the actual venue, which was wild.
Wow.
But pro wrestling, as you'll see too, it's great. You're like on this huge, aspect. It's almost like a cosine curve. You know what I mean? It kind of goes up and down, and it's just whenever you start going up and you get hot with doing something, you just ride it out as long as you can, and you get the most that you possibly can out of it. But once you get to a certain point, and I think you are at the stage, like, now that you're getting over on the level you're getting over on, which is across all the platforms, you're always going to be over. It'll just be up to you to like tweak it as time goes forward. And that's been the thing with me and Jeff. It's hard to be, you know, one character for so long. You know, I don't know. Are you a Breaking Bad fan at all? Have you ever watched that?
Oh, of course. Yeah. Of course.
I mean, you know, Walter White, Heisenberg, amazing, you know, but they went 5 seasons. You know, the last season was kind of like 2 seasons, almost 6, but just, it's hard to write that much content for one character. And, you know, then he can change and he can be another performer, another character, and then have another show, whatever. And I almost kind of compare that to pro wrestling in some ways. You can do one character for X amount of years, then you need to tweak it a little bit, and you still remain essential to who you truly are, but then you tweak it a little bit and you do something new and you refresh the fans and give them something new to cheer for and get behind. So I'm really excited to watch your journey and see how high, you know, what is ultimately going to be the apex, the zenith of your overness.
Thank you, Matt. I appreciate that. For me, one of the people that I kind of look at as a good person for me to emulate is actually John Cena. And I think that when I'm not super over like in previous years, I have limited time with the audience. So that's why the real focus is on all the memeable stuff, and then pretty much only that. So all the promos are very sort of like predetermined, and it's only the turn and all that. Whereas now that I have some more attention, there is more room. You know, when Cena went from, you know, basic thugonomics and doing the raps to who John Cena became, a much more nuanced character, I think I have a little bit more room now to, like you say, let the people in a little bit. So I think I'm in that next phase where I'm allowed to let some of that some of me as a person come through. And I feel like I'm starting to tap into that thing where The Rock and Stone Cold talk about, you know, it's just you with the volume turned up. I'm just adding in a little bit of that
Yeah.
now, and it's a lot of fun. It's a lot
Yeah.
of fun.
Very much. That was some advice Stone Cold said to us as well. He said, just be you. He said, be you to a 10. You know, be you with the volume tuned up as much as you can. If you can go a little past a 10, then go past it. You know, do that. And he's right. It's true. Like, if you can figure out a character that fits you, that you feel comfortable with, and you can insert as much of your realness into it, that's when you usually have a winning success.
Yeah.
Speaking of characters, Joe, we ask all of our guests this. You are on the Extreme Life of Matt Hardy. You got a favorite Matt Hardy character over the years?
I think for me, it is Broken Matt Hardy, because I think Matt, I think you were a pioneer in that sense, because you were the thing that was most talked about in the business at that time. I remember I worked at What Culture Pro Wrestling, and I was doing some. They have like a big video game channel as well. So as well as wrestling for their promotion, I was doing like YouTube intros for their video game content. And I remember when you guys dropped the first big video at the Hardy compound, I was looking around the office, and everyone in the office was huddled around one computer screen. You got like 30 people huddled around watching this thing. They got no idea what is going on. And again, it, like you say, it was when TNA wasn't necessarily being talked about the most at that time.
Right.
And to me, for you to be able to do that and have the courage to actually, that's what it is to me. It's the courage to do it. It's being able to say, yes, you're Matt Hardy, you've done X, Y, and Z, but I'm going to have the courage to leave all that behind and completely start something new, and I'm going to commit to it. And I feel like because you committed not 95 or 98%, you committed 100%, and you had no choice but for it to be successful. And your 100% commitment is what made that work, in my view.
Thank you. Thank you for those very kind words. And that was my mindset going into it. I said, when I'm going to do this, I'm going all the way in. And like, people will either buy it that something happened to him, and maybe he really does have these superhuman beliefs and powers, and he's an animal who'll eat off ears, whatever it may be. I said, or they'll think he's crazy, one or the other. I said, and as long as I stay in character and in gimmick the whole while, then I think I can pull this off. I remember there were times once I got hot, they said, hey, Dave Meltzer wants you on his show. Okay, are you cool doing that? And I said, as long as it's in gimmick, I will not come out of character, because I'm going to go on and I'm going to talk about being 2,100 years old. I'm going to talk about my essences and everything else. And I said, I'm not dropping. I'm not going on to talk about star ratings and quality of matches and whatnot, because that's not what this guy's about. And I drug that out as long as I could. And I felt like one of the reasons it was so successful is because I was so committed to the bit, and I drug it out. Once we went back to WrestleMania, there were a couple things that didn't allow me to be Broken Matt Hardy immediately, of course. So then I had to kind of go back to being just me. And I tried to be a mixture of it just to keep it alive, because I knew we'd probably do it later. But that's like when you lose a little bit of the magic. Like, if you're ever at that point where you are doing a character and people are biting on it, just stay true to it as much as you can. Orange Cassidy's a guy who did a great job with that, because he was just so true to his gimmick. He stayed in character, and people understood that's what he was, and they go, okay, well, this is just a guy who, like, didn't really give a shit. He'll try a little bit, maybe he'll do good, maybe he won't, but like, I get what he is, and he was very committed to it and everything he did. And you're right, like once you choose a path and a destination with a character and persona, you got to stick with it 100%.
So, Joe, are you the type of person now who's thinking about what's next? Are you trying to live in the moment and enjoy it? What's your approach? Because, man, I'm watching Game 7 of the Stanley Cup Finals. It's the most viewed hockey game since 2019. And there's a freaking sign for Carter Verhaeghe saying, I believe in Verhaeghe, with him superimposed over your face. I'm like, this is taking on a whole new form of viralness, essentially. So are you trying to plot out how you go about that next? What's your approach?
Well, I think this whole campaign that I've been doing is based on disruptive behavior. And I think that every act has to be more disruptive than the last. So for it to continue, and that's why it's been ascending. I got my song on the chart. I did the Creed song, and my song got in the charts. It blew up on TikTok. Now we've had the NXT thing. And, there's a lot of people who can tell me, this is impossible or that's impossible. But we're in a time in the business where anything can happen. I just saw the other, so it's weird how the universe kind of comes together sometimes. Like I did Chris Van Vliet's show the other day, and I told this story about how when I was 15, I couldn't make a SmackDown show. I couldn't go. My friend went to the show, and he called me from the show, and he went to the meet and greet, and I answered the phone, and I hear this voice going, "Yo, it's your boy John Cena," and so John Cena used my friend's phone to call me and say hello because I couldn't make it to the meet and greet. And I thought, it just stuck in my head. And when I started wrestling, I'd started wrestling in 2013, and in 2015, someone asked me who my dream match was, and I said Kurt Angle. Kurt Angle DM'd me. We got talking, and a year later, we ended up facing each other in the main event of one of What Culture's pay-per-views with Jim Cornette and Jim Ross commentating. So I've seen things happen in my life that I've got no business happening. I started amateur wrestling at 26 years old, and I became a 2-time national champion just because I believed that I was going to run through the competition. And Lord knows how I did it, but it happened. I've had this happen where there's things in my life that have no business happening. And there's something that Dorian Yates said when he said, "Why not me?" And I'm kind of in that mindset. So I told this story about John Cena, and then I just kept seeing John Cena. And then I saw something about, he's rumored to wrestle the next Mania. And then I thought to myself, well, Jordan just did the Rumble, right? And I'm looking at the reaction. I'm saying the gap from where I am right now to facing John Cena is smaller than the gap that I've taken to get here. And I'm thinking, why the hell not? My clip is WWE's biggest clip on X this year. So I know I'm bringing something to the table, and I'm doing great business for TNA and WWE. I really believe I'm being a great soldier for both of them right now. So I'm going to trust myself to be bold and say, why can I not put my name in the hat to be the next person that wrestles John Cena? Why not? Because things happen in the business that have never happened before all the time. And I feel I can make a strong argument to do it.
I love it. I love that optimism for sure, man. I refer to myself as the ultimate optimist somewhat. And I'm very similar to that whenever I'm thinking about things of the future. I mean, like if you truly want something to happen, you have to put your mind to it and try and make it happen. And I just want to say, you were talking about, your songs, the way it was streaming and it was moving up the charts and whatnot. I notice every time now I'm on Instagram and I'm doing a post, if I'm tagging a song with it, one of the first 1 or 2 options that come up is "I believe in Joe Hendry." So I love to see it, man. That is so great to see that you have just the sprawl of your overness in many ways is so great, and I love that. Yeah, man.
Carry on.
No, go ahead.
I was just going to say, do you mind? I just think I'm about to say something that I think that would really benefit other wrestlers who are wondering what I'm doing and how I'm doing
Please.
it. Please. Do you mind if I just give a?
Please do.
It comes back to what you said earlier about how you almost became a meme. And I think how we have our 5 or 10 moves in a match, you have to have the same on social media. So how you call Speedball Mike Bailey's Ball of Speed.
Sure.
That's like one of your moves that you'll go on social media. People go, "Oh, I like that." And you can have 5, you can say "wonderful" in capital letters. You have 5, 10 moves on social media that you don't have to think about. They're just in your repertoire. And that's how I've approached it. So when someone talks, when someone says something terrible about me, "He's the worst wrestler ever," I just retweet it with my face.
The face. And I love that. Lots of love for those posts for sure.
That's one of my moves, so it's like, and I have 5 of those things. And what I would encourage talents to do is not just post everything, post, experiment, and see what gets traction, and learn what your 5 moves are on social media, and feed the algorithm what it wants. And so, for example, when we started this journey, my brother, who did a bit of editing for me, he does like my food show for TNA, he quit his shoot job at McDonald's, and I was like, well, guess you're a full-time video editor. So we started making these little memes, and the memes started getting over, but not as much as it's over now. So this is what I mean about evolving. We started the memes, which got a little bit of attention, which then led into the songs, but it got to a point where we're going, actually, when I post my face, it's getting 30,000 likes. And when we post a meme that took us 4 hours to edit, it's only getting 2,000 likes. So now we got to leave that behind. So what we're doing is we're using our 5 moves, but let's leave that one now and let's move on to the next one. It's all analytics and data.
That's that's a great analogy, and that's right, especially for promoting yourself as a performer on social media. And I absolutely agree. I mean, that's how it is. Once I got the stuff over with Broken Matt Hardy, then I just had that stuff I could keep going back to, and I could keep posting it again and again and again. And then, like, as time goes on and I change, I incorporate new stuff. And I'm excited about this thing at TNA because obviously I have a lot of say in what I'm doing, and I'm going to kind of infuse regular Matt Hardy, with broken Matt Hardy. So you're going to see a little bit more of those changes coming through. And once again, I think it's time for me to reinvent as well. And TNA is the perfect platform for me to reinvent on. So I'm really excited about that. And it starts this weekend.
Well, Joe, when you eventually feud with Matt Hardy, one of his favorite songs is Long Road by Pearl Jam. So there's a little material for you. You got that for when you break out the Matt Hardy parody song. It's ready to go. Man, this has been so great. I genuinely, I'm sure Matt will echo this sentiment. This has been one of my favorite interviews we've done on this podcast in the last 3 years. So super appreciative of you hopping on. Is there anything else you'd like to add?
There is actually. And the last thing I want to say is I saw that Jeff posted today. He did a little version of my theme song. And it got me thinking, what if at one show, listen, you guys might need some backup. The Hardy boys might need the Hendry boy as a bit of backup. You know what I mean? So I think it would be very funny if we did a mashup entrance where maybe I don't want to give away too much, but I got some funny.
Can ideas. You juke?
I'm sure if I try and do that, it will become a meme at how badly I will do it. But it
won't be worse than mine.
I wait for it, but I will suffer for the audience's entertainment.
Okay,
that's fine. Okay.
No, I agree with what you're saying. And when I saw Jeff did that this morning, I was very surprised about it. I was like, "Whoa, that was so cool!" I know, he enjoyed that. When we did that deal with you last week, and he loved to come back to TNA, and he had such a good time doing it. He's looking forward to this weekend. And Jeff's passion more than wrestling right now is singing and performing, and he loves these concerts that he's been doing recently. But yeah, the fact that he did that and he hit part of your stuff, and that I Believe in Joe Hendry, I loved it so much. And the fact that he posted that, he's just finally learning to post. He's like, I kind of understand how Instagram works now. I mean, this is from a 46-year-old man. It's wild.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was super cool that he posted that this morning.
That's amazing. Well, we got a live show on July 13th. It's a live podcast and a live Jeff Hardy concert. We do need an opening act. If you're interested, you're more than welcome, Joe.
I'll be more than happy to come and do a little collaboration. No problem.
Fantastic. I believe in Joe Hendry. Matt Hardy believes in Joe Hendry, and right now the wrestling world believes in Joe Hendry. Joe, thanks so much for hopping on the Extreme Life of Matt Hardy.
Thanks for having me, guys. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you. This was amazing. See you soon, buddy.
What a great chat with Joe Hendry there, Matt. What do you think?
Phenomenal. I think that may be the best interview we've ever done here with talent. We had quite a few really, really cool guys, really great names on here. And I think that's the best interview we've ever done.
He reminded me a lot of Ethan Page. And how he thinks about wrestling and digests it. They're very similar in that. I'm not surprised you guys got along so well.
Yeah, I agree.
And it's great to see that you believe in Joe Hendry, because I do too. And I think he's got a lot of potential and a lot of promise ahead of him. Great stuff, man. Great stuff. Is there anything else you want to throw out there about Joe, TNA, anything else on your mind?
I mean, if you are listening to this as a loyal Extreme Life of Matt Hardy fan on Friday, if you're in the Philadelphia area, Friday night, I am going to be in Philly, myself and Queen Rebecca. We are going to be wrestling in a mixed tag match. And then on Saturday, the Hardy Boys debut since returning to TNA. And it's going to be our first match since December 20th, if I'm not mistaken. I think you said that earlier. And the last time we actually won a tag match was a Double or Nothing 2022 against the Bucks of Youth. So we're getting ready to break that streak. Win a match, win some titles, but the entire shows are going to be great. And who knows? We talked about it earlier at the very beginning of the episode, the NXT and TNA, trade off. They're working together. Obviously, there's some crossover happening. Who knows? Who knows who'll show up from NXT?
Who knows? Maybe we'll get Paul Heyman doing the shocked face if the streak ends and everything, just like he did with Brock and Taker. Oh, I meant to ask you too. Roman's father, Sika passed.
Oh yes.
Anything you want to add on that?
Yeah, I saw that. I didn't see that until later in the day. It happened a lot earlier. Very, very busy when you told me about that day. And just first and foremost, I feel terrible for Roman. The loss of a father is a very tough, challenging thing. I saw what he had written about it, though, so it seems like he's good. Really, always got along good with Roman. Lots of respect for him. Lots of respect for what he did for the bloodline and his father. I met him a few times over the years, and he was always very kind. He was always very friendly. He was always very complimentary of the stuff we were doing. And I just want to say it was just very sad. Rest in peace, my friend. Bye, Mama.
You enjoy the Wild Samoans growing up?
I did. I've gone back and watched some of their stuff. The first Samoans that had a big hold on me were the SST, the Samoan SWAT team. Those guys, I loved them when they were rocking the NWA. Like, holy shit, there was a lot of stuff I emulated. I emulated the big splash on the trampoline in the backyard for sure.
Yeah, there's still more members of the Anoa'i family that I'm sure we'll be seeing over the next few years in WWE. I saw someone on Elon Musk's X was like, man, how busy was Rikishi during the Attitude Era? Just
yeah. I do got to say, I'm very, very excited. Jacob Fatu got to show up in WWE. He's someone that since I've met him, I've loved him. He's been great. Really excited for him. I think his future is limitless. I think he's going to be incredible going forward.
What stands out about him too?
I mean, first and foremost, he's just been so respectful towards me and Jeff. Big into the Hardys when he was coming up, and just such a down to earth, on the level guy. Much like most Samoans, really just a cool oos. You know what I mean? As they hit that, like just such a cool cat, and he is so insanely talented. He's a big guy. He can move. He's strong. He can do it all, and I am very, very excited to see him on the WWE plane and see how great he can become. And I think his ceiling is extremely, extremely high. I think he's a guy who can be a leader there.
Yeah, to me, he's an even more athletic version of Umaga in terms of how he works. And Umaga was pretty damn athletic for his size. So
yeah.
Seeing Jacob, I think he's going to thrive big. And like you said, I think he's going to be standout top guy player in WWE.
I do too. He's special. I mean, you talk to him, he's special.
I totally agree. And like you said, very humble too. So excited to see what he does there. Always excited to see what's next to come on the Extreme Life of Matt Hardy. Leave us those 5-star reviews. I know it's been a while since we've talked about those, but man, that's how you help get this show in front of more people. If you're watching on YouTube, like, comment, subscribe. It's the easiest thing. That's what your son Wolfgang would say, right?
Yes. He would say like, comment, and subscribe. Just in that order.
That helps things go a long way here, and we want to help you too on the Extreme Life. Advertise with Hardy.com. Promote your business to the extreme. Get it out in front of thousands of listeners and viewers every single week. That's Advertise with Hardy.com to learn how you can get on board with the Extreme Life of Matt Hardy. And we would love to see you in Atlantic City, July 13th at ACX1 Studios at the Pier at Caesars, part of 90s Wrestling Con. It is a Hardy Party, a night with the Hardys, an Extreme Life of Matt Hardy podcast, followed by a live Jeff Hardy concert. You never know. Joe Hendry could show up. Not promising it, but you never know based on our conversations with him there. That is www.hardyboyslive.com. That's www.hardyboyslive.com. Super, super excited for that. Matt, anything else you'd like to say?
Yeah, I don't know. If we keep saying Joe Hendry's name over and over and over and over, he'll probably pop up at some point. I mean, he's forced to. It's almost like when you're a vampire and your maker calls you. You have to go. You say his name enough, he'll end up showing up.
Say his name and he appears. This has been the Extreme Life of Matt Hardy. We will see you next time.
Delete!
Your house is probably worth more than ever right now. But if you could change one thing about your house, what would it be? Would you put in a new kitchen? Maybe some new hardwood floors? You can do all of that with no money out of pocket at SaveWithConrad.com. Use your equity to make your house worth even more. You might even be able to get a lower payment too. A better house with a lower payment without moving? Sign me up for that. NMLS number 32416, equal housing lender, savewithconrad.com.